I just think it's so important that stories of veterans are collected. I had the honor of serving in the United States Navy Reserve, was a CB combat warfare specialist, a lieutenant commander, and while I was there, I met some of the most honorable people that you would ever meet, patriots who believe deeply in the country. They all have wonderful stories to tell. It's important to capture that so that the American people understand that history is not just written with the admirals and the generals and the presidents and big decisions, but history is really written by individual soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors, Coast Guardsmen that are out there serving their country day and day. That's really the heart and fabric of history. That's where all the context and where all of the content of what the human struggle is all about, it lies with the individual stories. You know, I grew up hearing the stories of my father. My father was a World War II veteran. He served in Europe, was part of Eisenhower's command. He came across the beaches of Normandy, not during the D-Day invasion, but a couple months afterwards, but talked about the vivid stories of going across France in a very war-torn country. He did have a very positive experience, though. He met a beautiful French woman while he was there, fell in love and married, and that's my mother. So my mom is a war bride. She met my father in her hometown of Reims, which is actually the town where the armistice was signed for World War II, and the schoolhouse where she went to school was the place where World War II came to an end. But I certainly heard her stories growing up as someone who lived in a war-torn country, had to evacuate the Germans as they were coming across France. And it's those stories that really paint this incredibly human picture of what war is like, of what sacrifice is like, what patriotism is all about. And until people hear those stories from an individual, someone who lived it, someone who experienced it, someone who felt it in a most personal way, I don't think we have a good understanding of what's involved with our men and women who serve and put on a uniform. So it's a great project that to collect these stories, and we've got to get everybody's story recorded for all time.
Operation Baby Lift was enacted during the closing days of the war to get orphans out of Vietnam before the fall of Saigon. Phil Wise was a medical technician in the United States Air Force. He was on board a C-5A Galaxy aircraft loaded with hundreds of babies, children, and adults. The crowded plane took off, and the evacuation ordered by President Ford seemed to be headed towards success until the rear doors blew off at 25,000 feet, and everything changed.
Normally when we fly over a combat zone, we usually cruise at an altitude between 35,000 and 50,000 feet. So we had taken off, we got up to about 25,000 feet, close to it, and suddenly this loud explosion happened, or this loud noise, boom, happened. And I looked back and I saw the rear cargo doors and ramp rip off the aircraft, and we were at 23,000 plus feet. And I remember seeing the sky, blue sky, the white clouds, and the cold air, and everything that we had placed in the rear of the aircraft or aft of the aircraft went out with the doors. And I remember hearing the screaming and yelling, and a lot of fog in the air. I remember being thrown about. I'm not sure if I grabbed the cargo tie-down strap or not, but I got to the point where I tried to breathe and I couldn't breathe. And at that point, we were in what they call a rapid decompression. So all the oxygen in the cabin had left out the cabin when the doors went out. So at 20-something thousand feet, we didn't have anything to breathe. I remember seeing bodies sucked out. I remember the coldness. And at that point, I knew it was abnormal to see the sky. At that point, I tried to stay focused, because I never thought I was going to die. I didn't have time to think about that, but the screaming and the yelling and the fear around me was saying otherwise. So therefore, I didn't have time to be afraid, because I was unable to breathe. I tried to breathe, but I couldn't breathe. Well, the pilot, what he did, he tried to turn the aircraft around and go back to the base at Tansanute Air Force Base, Saigon. And when the doors blew off, that broke the hydraulic system that was a part of the aircraft. So the pilot had trouble maneuvering the aircraft. So what he did, he would descend down and try to pull the aircraft up to break its descent, the speed of descent. He would go down and pull it up. So we got to the point where we were over the South China Sea when the doors blew off, by the way. So instead of crash landing in the South China Sea, he tried to make it back to the base. And he realized that he wasn't going to make it. He was able to get to the rice paddies, and he clipped this tree line, and he ended up bellowing down after clipping the tree line. And we had the Saigon River. He ended up bellowing down on one side of the Saigon River, and we went airborne again. And we just barely cleared the other side of the river. And the aircraft bounced and broke apart. And keep in mind that when we bellied down, we had a belly full of passengers, and of course I was down there myself. And the crew compartment, which was upstairs. Now the C-5, from the wheel to tail, is a 5-story aircraft. So when we bellied down, the whole bottom just demolished, just flat, and debris was scattered from miles. The crew compartment where the babies were, that part slid off the belly of the cargo section like a toboggan. It slides off, it broke away, and it rolled over and kind of slid off. So we only lost 2 kids in the crew compartment. But in the cargo compartment, we lost everybody. I found out later that I was the only survivor out of nearly 200 out of that cargo section. Air America, which is an arm of the CIA, they cordoned off the crash site. As soon as the plane crashed, the local villagers just raced to the crash site, just pillaging the crash site, just taking whatever they could. The CIA saw me off to a distance in the burning wreckage, and my uniform was a white shirt with dress blue trousers. So they saw my white shirt off to a distance. They said, wow, we gotta save the medic's body so it won't burn. So then once they got to me, they found me hanging upside down, my left leg entangled in wire cable. And my head was open, my eyeball hanging out, my chest. And they said, well, we better save his body so it won't charge. So they got to untangling me, and then they said, wow, this dude's still alive.